Hey parents, in this video we are going to tackle a topic that is pretty complex and pretty deep, which is PANDAS or PANS in the world of these pediatric autoimmune neuropsychiatric disorders. So what does this show up as? If you're here in this video, if this caught your eye, you probably got a kid who all of a sudden started having some anxiety, or they started having some sort of tic, repetitive motion, repetitive hand washing, or they're picking at their skin, or they had, say, a crazy immune response and now their nervous system and their body shut down. If this caught your eye, you're probably in the thick of that already, and you have a little bit of an understanding of what is going on, or at least you've heard some different terms and phrases being thrown around. What we want to do here is unpack that a little bit more so you have a better understanding of what's going on with PANS and PANDAS. But even more importantly, I want to give you some action steps as to how can we get heading in the opposite direction and how do we start healing from this. Because if you've gone through this, if your kid had some of those struggles and challenges, you probably went through some medical testing. You went through some different procedures and evaluations, and a lot of times that is leaving you feeling kind of frustrated and honestly empty-handed, because those tests and those examinations are normal, right? Everything seems fine. Everything seems okay. Sometimes it's because we are completely missing what's going on. Other times it's because you're not really getting to the right test or the right procedure that needs to be done and correlated with those challenges. But no matter what the story is, no matter what your kid has gone through, we need to be asking different questions and looking at it differently. Because what those tests are typically doing is trying to give a name or supply a specific label psychiatrically to that set of symptoms or to that set of challenges. But it usually doesn't answer the question of why is it taking place, or the question of the cause. And what we see with challenges like this, the systems that are affected are widespread, right? It's affecting your immune system. It's affecting the gut and the GI system, your nervous system, the way that your brain is functioning, and the behaviors and the emotion regulation. And when we see that there's all of these different systems of the body being affected, it's not just an inflammation thing. It's not just a gut healing thing. It is a neuroregulation thing. The word that you'll hear us use and the word that you'll find maybe in your research is called dysautonomia. Just means a dysregulated autonomic nervous system. And that's what I want to walk you through and explain how that is really at the root of these things. So let's define the terms a little bit. PANS, PANDAS, very similar definitions. It's a pediatric autoimmune neuropsychiatric disorder. And PANDAS, the AS at the end means that it's associated with a strep infection, versus PANS that's some other sort of immune trigger, some other sort of virus or bug that set it off. The key words here are the autoimmune one. So the autoimmune that then affects the neuropsychiatric part of it. Because what ends up happening is your immune system starts attacking cells that aren't the strep infection or aren't whatever the other virus or invader was, but they start attacking your own body. Why would this be taking place? And why wouldn't every kid that has an infection that has strep end up with PANDAS and PANS then? Well, because the issue is the regulation of that immune cells, right? Strep does tend to do a good job of mimicking our own cells, which is why we end up in this situation sometimes. But really, we need a regulated immune system that can differentiate between your own cells and the invaders and the bad guys. When we see that that's not taking place, that's what points us back to that neurological piece of it. And that's where that inflammation can end up in different parts of the cerebellum, the basal ganglia, this upper cervical brainstem region of your body. And then because that controls immune regulation in the guts, and then honestly some of the behavior, emotional, focus, OCD things too, that's how all of those other secondary things take place. But the key takeaway that I want you to understand from this is not just an inflammation issue, right? I don't want you to say like, okay, we just need to go on this crazy high dose of round-the-clock anti-inflammatories, or we need to be on, just address this with antibiotics for months and months and months on end. Listen, maybe there is a role for those interventions. That's where we rely on not just the traditional healthcare pediatrician options, but honestly, our favorite resources are some of the more functional medicine, holistically integrative-minded pediatricians, and we can absolutely connect you with those resources if you're looking for help in those ways. But those are the resources we love encouraging, because those are the ones that understand the cause piece of this, right, and addressing the actual why. So yes, you might need to address the immune regulation, the inflammatory piece, but if you miss the dysautonomia, the dysregulated nervous system, your immune cells are never going to be able to sort that out. They're never going to be able to figure out, who do I need to go after and who do I need to attack? So the way we attack that and the way we go after that at Thrive, and from a pediatric, neurologically focused chiropractic perspective, is through measuring and assessing the nervous system, specifically the vagus nerves, hopefully the vagus nerve. If you've been in this world a little bit and you've been doing your homework and your research, you've probably come across that. And you've heard about this vagus nerve, which is a cranial nerve that comes out of the base of your skull, goes by these first couple of cervical vertebrae, and it does the majority of that regulation functions of the immune and gut and development pathways. When that vagus nerve is disrupted, what we would call subluxation, when there's this cranial upper cervical subluxation or stress, some sort of dysfunction in that upper neck, it means that that control of the inflammatory pathways, the control of our immune regulation is thrown off and disrupted. One of the scans that we'll measure that with is what we call heart rate variability. We'll have this graph here, and this would show up as someone who is in that fight or flight state or in a more state of survival where that vagus nerve has been suppressed and turned down. That would mean that white dot there is more shifted towards the left or the sympathetic side of the neurology there. So we want to start with measuring that, right? What is that overall autonomic tone like? Is this kid already depleted and exhausted and shut down? And then where within their nervous system are those primary findings? Is it just that upper cervical spine, or has that inflammation touched the gut in the GI system and other places too? This makes me think of one of the research studies that we share at our Perfect Storm workshop. It's a study when they took two groups of different rats and they were feeding them the same diet, giving them the same nutrition, but in one group of the rats, they did a vagotomy, which is they severed or cut the vagus nerve, and the other group, normal functioning nervous system and vagus nerve. What they found in that process is even though the diet, the nutrition, the supplement side of it was the same, the ones who had that disrupted autonomic nervous system, the ones that didn't have the vagus nerve, had massive amounts of inflammation, massive amounts of gut dysbiosis and disease, and all sorts of other symptoms and challenges. Yes, your nutrition, your supplements, your detox things, those matter a ton, but when you're doing that and missing the neurological regulation piece of it, you're at best not getting the most impact out of it that you should, and honestly at worst, or probably more likely, is you're not getting much good at all, and you might be just spinning your wheels and wasting a lot of time and money and energy. Don't get me wrong, those pieces are needed, right? We love our functional integrative providers because you need to heal and unwind and detox from those processes, but when you're doing that in conjunction with neurological healing, or maybe after your nervous system has already gotten some momentum going, man, it's so much more effective and so much more powerful. So that's what I want to kind of leave you as with the takeaway here, guys, is let's not just focus on the immune part of this autoimmune condition, because when we have a disorder that's touching so many different systems of the body, we know it's got to be neurologically based because that's the system that regulates everything else. So let's address the nervous system. Let's support healing on that, dynamic and in that system so that everything else is way more effective and way more helpful that maybe you're already doing, right? Hopefully you've already got some of those steps in place and your kid is making progress. We just need to take that up to a new level and help them heal even more. There's a link in our bio that has an article that explains what is a little bit more about PANDAS. You can dig into some of the more research and support there. Reach out to us if you need some of those functional medicine connections in the area, or if you want to get your kid scanned, please give the team a call, send us a DM or a message here, because that's what we're here for. Here to help your family thrive, here to help your kid make sure that they're reaching their full potential.